What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. On our last video, I gave you my top 10 most overrated teams heading into the 2022 college football season. In this video, we're going to give you the top 10 underrated teams heading into 2022. Last video was way longer than I meant for it to be. I had a bunch of notes in front of me, and I guess I just rambled along too much. So I have no notes in front of me. Hopefully I don't screw anything up. I'm just going to kind of do this off of memory and give you, based off of hours and hours and hours of research, the 10 teams that I think are being underrated the most headed into this season. So we'll start, and it was kind of hard to rank these. I mean, 10 through 1, there's really not much difference. I think they're all a little bit underrated. I don't think any of these teams are really way overrated. I did go back to last year's video, and it was okay. It wasn't as good as the overrated. I really nailed most of the teams that were overrated. I didn't get as many of the underrated teams right. I think the top two, though, were Kentucky and Pittsburgh, and they definitely proved that they were being underrated. There were a couple more that I think fit that as well. But we're looking at 2022 now, and we start with number 10. That is Washington. Washington, 4-8 last season. Nobody's really talking about this team. I mean, the Pac-12 is all about USC, Oregon, and Utah. The other teams, I think it's just like they have been forgotten, like they don't even exist. Washington's not the only Pac-12 team that's going to be on this video, but I do think Washington has a chance to surprise some people this year. You look at teams with new coaches, and I've always thought, well, they got a new coach, they're going to be down, they're not going to be as good. But we've seen in recent years, sometimes new coaches can come in and provide a spark for a team and for a program, and they immediately start to play better. Washington should be significantly better on offense this year. They were terrible last year. The defense, though, was good, and I think they'll be good once again. When you go back to last season and you look, they had a ton of close one possession games. This year, maybe they translate some of those games into wins. I think this team was better than their 4-8 record would suggest. They just needed that spark on offense. They've got 3 quarterbacks that could potentially play for them. So you would think that one of those guys is going to emerge and be pretty good. So I think Washington is a sleeper team in the Pac-12. Not saying they're going to win it, but I think they are being overlooked a little bit. Moving on to number 9, Louisville in the ACC. Another team that I think is really being overlooked. When you look at the ACC Atlantic Division, it's all about Clemson, NC State, Wake Forest, and then maybe Florida State. Everyone's talking about those 4 teams. Louisville is a team that I think could be sneaky good in that conference. Maybe they finish ahead of 1 or 2 of those teams I just named. Malik Cunningham back at quarterback. A lot of production really on both sides of the ball. They didn't lose much from last year's team. They were not great last year, but they were 6-7, had an okay year. I think they will improve this offseason and be better, and I think Louisville could be a surprise team in the ACC. Moving on to number 8, the Florida Gators. I personally really have underrated this team. When you really look into the roster and what they have coming back, there's a lot of talent on this Florida team, especially their starters. Their starting lineup, I think, can match up pretty well with some of the top teams in the SEC, even Georgia. I think their starters can match up with Georgia pretty well. It's behind the starters. It's the depth that concerns me a little bit with Florida. But, Billy Napier brought some players over with him. They have a lot of guys in that running back room. If Anthony Richardson can be what Florida fans think he can be, and I know they are hyping him up, and if he can live up to that hype, Florida could be a dangerous team. Florida could be a team that might even make a run in the SEC East, maybe even could knock off Georgia potentially. I think it does. A lot of that does ride on Anthony Richardson and how good he actually is. But if he's good, Florida is going to be a top 25 team in my opinion this year, and a lot of people not even putting them in their preseason top 25. I don't even think I had them in my preseason top 25, the last one that I did, or at least my post-spring top 25. They might just be in the preseason one that I do here in a couple of months. Moving on to number 7, the Oregon Ducks. All right, I know everyone's talking about USC and Lincoln Riley coming in and the transfers they brought in. Oregon, from top to bottom, position to position, I'll go ahead and say it right now. The Oregon roster is better than the USC roster. I had USC actually on the overrated video. Oregon, I think, is underrated because if you look at the way they've recruited, I know they lost some guys. They lost some guys in the transfer portal as well, but they brought in some guys in the transfer portal. They've got the talent on defense, and Dan Lanning should be able to step in here and get a lot from the guys on this defense. It's really been about the quarterback spot. They just haven't had that guy. Bo Nix might just be that guy for them. I know we've seen great Bo Nix and we've seen awful Bo Nix. He's been very inconsistent, but he's reunited with his very first offensive coordinator. He looked really good in the spring game. They've got a deep group of wide receivers. Maybe not a bunch of stars, but a bunch of guys that I think can go out there and compete and be Power 5 wide receivers. I think Oregon could be a big surprise this year. I know it's USC, it's Utah. Some people may be talking about Oregon a little bit. Don't be surprised if Oregon is a team that comes out of that Pac-12. I think that they have a chance to be really good. If Bo Nix, it's all about Bo Nix. If Bo Nix can be that special Bo Nix that we have seen at times, I think Oregon probably wins the Pac-12. I'll go ahead and say that right now. If he struggles, if he's inconsistent, they probably won't. But they've got the talent on the roster. This is, again, in my opinion, the most talented roster in the Pac-12. Moving on to number 6, Ole Miss. They were 10-3 last year, had a great year. Then they lost a bunch of guys, and everyone, I think, pretty much threw in the towel on the Rebels. But they did a phenomenal job in the transfer portal. I think they did. It wasn't just adding guys. So, look, USC added a ton. They, I think, might have the best transfer portal class according to 24/7 Sports. But if you look at what they added a ton of skill position guys. They didn't necessarily fill all of their needs. I think Ole Miss did a better job at filling their needs. Really, really did a good job. If you kind of go down their entire roster, and I don't have it in front of me, but if you look at who they added, before they added some of these guys, I was thinking, well, this position, that concerns me about Ole Miss. And then, boom, they added a transfer. And they just did a really good job filling out their roster. It's been about Texas A&M and Arkansas. Those are the teams that could maybe challenge Alabama in the SEC West. I think Ole Miss is a team that has the best chance of beating Alabama. This is going to be a very dangerous offense with Lane Kiffin calling plays and the talent they have, the guys they brought in the transfer portal and everything. Ole Miss's offense is going to be very good. The defense probably won't be great, let's just be honest, but if it can be just a little bit better and that offense can pick up where it left off last year, Ole Miss could find themselves at number 2 in the SEC West when all is said and done. Number 5 is Stanford. Stanford is a team that just has a ton of. They're here because they have a ton of production coming back. Both sides of the ball. This is going to be one of the more experienced teams. David Shaw, I still believe to be a good coach. I know they have struggled the last couple of years. This is it for him. I mean, with the production they have coming back, this has got to be a 7-5, 8-4 type team at least. Or maybe he's done at Stanford. I don't know. If they don't do something this year, I think you have to look at the coaching staff because they've got the production coming back. They've got enough talent to be at least in the middle of the pack in the Pac-12. So I think that this Stanford team could really turn things around in 2022. Watch out for them to finally kind of get back to being not a great team, but a good team this upcoming season. Number 4 is Purdue. Purdue finished the season really strong last year. Aiden O'Connell is back. That passing attack really took off for them, and I expect that to continue this year. They've got some guys back on defense. They got a very favorable schedule as well. Purdue, I think, is a team that, because of their schedule, should be the favorite in the Big Ten West. When you look at Wisconsin and Iowa, 2 teams I had on the overrated video, everyone likes to talk about them, and maybe Nebraska. But Purdue could wind up winning that division. It wouldn't surprise me at all. And Minnesota could as well. Minnesota's number 3 on our list. This team has a ton of production coming back, a ton of experience. They've got a bunch of 5th and 6th year guys. Tanner Morgan, we have seen at times be a really good quarterback. He hasn't done it consistently. If he can get back to that, Minnesota becomes a really good team. Minnesota was on my video last year for underrated, and they proved that they were underrated. This team won 9 games. Mo Ibrahim back at running back after the early season injury. He's one of the top running backs in the country, and just, again, experience across the board. Minnesota might be the best team in the Big Ten West. I think Purdue, they have that schedule, so that kind of makes me want to say that they should be the favorites, but Minnesota, a really good team, definitely the most experienced team. Nebraska's in that conversation as well, but like I said in the overrated video, I'm not picking Iowa or Wisconsin to win the Big Ten West. I'm going to be picking from these other 3 teams. Not going to reveal that just yet, but I do think Minnesota and also Purdue are very underrated coming into this year. Michigan State at number 2. I've talked about them a lot this offseason. A lot of people think that this team was maybe a fluke last year. I do not think that it was a fluke. I believe Mel Tucker knows what he's doing. They surprised me, and I definitely missed the mark on Michigan State. Didn't even expect them to get to a bowl game. Some people look at the losses, but I think they've done a really good job of adding the players that they needed to add in the transfer portal. Because of that, they've got a lot of veterans on the roster. And I think Michigan State is potentially the 3rd best team in the Big Ten. I think this is a very good football team. Not sure if they're going to be able to knock off Ohio State, but I do think that they will be a top 10, 15 team this upcoming season. Number 1 for me is Miami. I've been hyping them up, it seems like, now for a while. And I'm not changing my mind. I feel confident that Miami is going to be a really good team. I think they can compete with Texas A&M. I think they can compete with Clemson. They were last year one of the most experienced teams as far as returning production goes, and they are again this year. That means that's 2 years in a row where they have had a lot of production coming back. In addition to some really good players coming in the transfer portal, that makes Miami's roster really good and really deep. Mario Cristobal, I've said this before, I don't think he's a great coach, a great on-the-field coach, but he has surrounded himself with some really good coordinators. And if everyone buys in and it comes together, Miami could be a team that, again, could compete with Texas A&M, could possibly even knock off Clemson, might even win the ACC. This is a very dangerous team, in my opinion. I think they at least will be a 10-win team this year, maybe even more than that. And if you think this is a team that's not a top 10, top 15 team, I think you are really underrating them. I think Miami, the most underrated team coming into 2022. It's interesting that I have Miami as the most underrated team, and I had Texas A&M as the most overrated team, and those two teams are going to play. We'll see. Maybe there'll be a surprise in that game. I'll reveal my predictions for all the games, including that one, coming up very soon. But again, Miami is the team I've got at number 1. Would love to get your thoughts on this, how you would rank them, who would you add to the list, who would you take off. Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more here on the SG1 Sports College Football Channel.